Welcome to Game of Thrones Abridged on Alt Swift X. We are returned like Gandalf the White, back from presumed death into greater, brighter form. All of our memories, they're addled, aren't they? Remember when Gandalf came back? And everyone's like, "Shit, it's Gandalf. He's had a makeover, like on the reality TV show. He's got a new fancy cloak. He's got a new haircut. What's his angle? Blue steel." And then they're like, "Yo, Gandalf, what happened?" And he's like, "Oh, Gandalf, I remember that name." So you're like, "Fuck, Gandalf was changed." I mean, Tolkien puts shit on Tolkien doesn't. George Martin puts shit on Tolkien for bringing Gandalf back. George says that, Gandalf had a good death. He should have stayed down in the Balrog hole. That's what they called it. Tolkien's all about holes. It's either hobbit holes, Balrog holes, everything in between. But Gandalf was like, ooh, Gandalf, that's a name, because Gandalf lost memories after his death. Swift rises again now, harder and stronger after our absence, and maybe we're missing some memories as well. But the point is, like Gandalf the White, we will defeat Saruman. The Saruman of failing to release a regular. Okay, but here's the other thing: the community, the Swifty squad, the Swiftites, the Swifty Italy, them. They've started their own YouTube channel with some wonderful, strange pieces for your perusal. All sorts of wild cards, Harry Potter, like ancient Hebrew tablets. I fucking love it. So go and click. There's a click in the description for you to link, and then you can. It's on the AltSwift X featured channels now, so you can all go and check that out. So now let's do the thing. Tyrion 9, A Game of Thrones. I'm seeing if I can still remember how to do this. I'm like Gandalf the White. I mean, what Game of Thrones? Who's Tyrion? Who's that? But we'll work it out. I'm feeling more like a Radagast than a Gandalf at the moment. Wasn't it great how Radagast was just like this fucking stoner? Like in Lord of the Rings, there was all this like heavy like swords and battles, high fantasy shit going on. But then you just got Radagast hanging out, just going like hanging out with the bunny rabbits and smoking some dank what was it called in Tolkien, like red, what did they smoke in Middle Earth? Anyway, Tyrion 9 A Game of Thrones begins with Tywin Lannister saying, "They have my son." He says it quietly at first. They talk about how Tywin speaks quietly, but men listen. It's power. True power is when you speak quietly and people listen. But it depends what you do with it, of course. But he's like, "They have my son," and then the messenger is like, "Yep, they sure do." And the messenger has a bit of blood on him. So the messenger has come from Riverrun, I believe, which has just been taken by the Starks from the Lannisters. The Lannisters were besieging Riverrun, but they've lost it because of the attack of Robb Stark. The Battle of Whispering Woods is what they call it. And now over in Tywin's host, he's getting the bad news that his dear son, his golden lion, Jaime, his heir, has been captured by the enemy, and Tywin is not too pleased by that. That's a real 3 out of 10. Would not recommend from Tywin Lannister. And then so they're like, they have my son. And then Tyrion, who's sitting there, thinks, "Oh, they have one of your sons, not both. You don't have me. I'm your son. Remember, Jaime's not your only son. You still got me. Aren't you happy that you still got me? Aren't you happy that you still got me?" That's the Tyrion. Whoa, that's the Tyrion voice. The point is that Tyrion's resentful of his father. I mean, he takes any possible opportunity to get pissed off at his dad. Showing concern for one son does not mean you hate the other, though the truth kind of is that Tywin's not a fan of Tyrion. And so Tyrion then goes on to think about how he does love his brother Jaime, um, and he hopes he's all right. But he would not have wanted to be with him in the Battle of the Whispering Wood. So as ever, we have this resentment dynamic between Tyrion and Tywin, and all the blokes are here, all the bannermen, all of the captains, all of the military higher ups, all of the. It's like in Catch 22, you got Captain Black and Colonel Cathcart and Major. There's a character who's actually called Major. You should read that book. But all the blokes are hanging out, and then Tywin's like, "They have my son." Page 2. And they're back in. They're back at the fucking inn at the crossroads. Everything happens at the inn and the crossroads here. I'm sure there's some great parallel. Is there someone comment? Is there some good parallel in fiction of like a place, one particular place that just like implausibly is just the place where every major event just happens to happen. Like the the crossroads is like the Arthur Dent of of Westeros. You know how like Arthur Dent, there's this character called Agrijag. Like Arthur Dent is just wandering around the galaxy one day when he gets like teleported into this guy's house. Except it's not a house, it's like a temple, and the temple is dedicated to all of the times that Arthur Dent accidentally killed the immortal soul of this guy Agrijag. We're presupposing reincarnation here, so like every time you die, you come back as some other creature, and just due to the inexplicablies of fate, this poor soul Agrijag has died and then come back as a fly, and then Arthur swats the fly, and then he came back as a cockroach, and Arthur stomped on the cockroach, and just through this ridiculous series of coincidences, Arthur then killed Agrijag like 1,000,000 times, and Agrijag's really upset by it. In the same way, the inn at the crossroads is just constantly having shit, like poor Masha Heddle. You remember Masha Heddle, right? Who ran the inn when Catelyn Stark took Tyrion captured Tyrion at the inn, and then Masha gets mashed by Tywin when Tywin turns up at the inn and makes it his base, and then Sandor fights there, and like all this shit happens at the inn. So it should be named the Dent in the Road after our friend Arthur. No tangents today. And so they're hanging out at the inn at the crossroads, and Tywin marched really hard to get here, and some people died along the way. Life is fucking cheap in Westeros, man. Like we're only in book 1. So shit hasn't even gotten real yet, and already like men are just like randomly dying by the roadside, and Tyrion's like, "What of it? What of it? I'm a fucking Lannister. He's just a half a Crakehall. Not even that. He's like a cousin. He's just some bloke." Blokes are dying, and they keep marching. But one of the things that keeps Tyrion sane is the warmth of Shae's body, who is his bedfellow in these times with Tywin's army. But Robb Stark arrived at Riverrun days ago, and Harris Swift is going, "Oh, this is a calamity, this is a disaster, whatever will we do? We've lost the Riverrun." And Harris Swift married into the Lannister family. Well, he didn't marry. His daughter married Sir Kevin Lannister, and that's why he's sort of here. But no one really likes him, or at least Tyrion doesn't. Tyrion describes Harris Swift as a shameless lickspittle who has no accomplishments any greater than marrying off his daughter. So Harris is a useless twat, basically. And of course, he therefore ends up on Cersei's small council in Book 4. So Cersei's government, the government that Cersei forms in A Feast for Crows, is really like a top 10 of the most useless lords in Westeros. Giles Rosby, Harris Swift, Uraine Waters. It's frankly impressive just how much shit floated to the top in Cersei's government. But yes, Harris Swift is one of them. And Harris is also. Oh, they talk a bit about like the strategic layout of Riverrun, because Riverrun is shaped in like the triangle, like it's like a fork in the river, and Riverrun is placed. The castle is placed in that fork, and they have a special system set up so that when people try to attack Riverrun, they set up this defensive measure which sets a moat. They run one of the rivers thus river run, around the castle, so it's like a moat. It's like if you put up your two fingers in a victory V sign. If you do a bit of a Winston Churchill, river run is nestled neatly between the crevice of your fingies. Your little fingy crevice is where river run nestles. And then if you get your third fingy and you awkwardly put it across your other two fingies, that it's castle logistics. You wouldn't understand. But the point is that it's not important. The point is that Riverrun was held by the Lannisters, and now it's not. The Starks took it back. And Gregor Clegane, the Mountain, is present at this meeting, and he speaks articulately, openly, which is something we don't see in the show. In the show, I mean, Gregor was, of course, recast like 3 times. And generally the Mountain, he doesn't talk much. I mean, especially after his death. But even before then, he's more of the sort of silent but deadly type. He doesn't say much, and that's how he's imposing. Interesting in the books though that he talks a fair bit. He's like, "Yo, I'm Greg," and well, no, he doesn't. He's like, "Why didn't your scouts see the attack coming at Riverrun? Didn't they see anything?" And the messenger's like, "Yeah, they didn't see anything." And Gregor's like, "Well, you should have pulled the eyes out of your scouts and handed them to the next man. And if he fails to see what's up, take his eyes out and give 4 eyes to the next bloke, and just keep increasing the number of eyes until you've got a banquet on it." No. But the point is that Gregor's talking, which is quite interesting, that he's like articulately speaking. I think it makes him sound less formidable. But here's the thing, I suppose, I mean, books are a bit of a verbal medium, aren't they? Whereas the show, you can show how big and scary the Mountain is. In the books, it's a bit harder to just say, he was big and scary, you know? Like, it's harder to make the Mountain a scary bloke when you don't have a visual, looming figure, right? So maybe that's why George chooses to use dialogue to make Gregor more of a scary bloke, talking about pulling people's eye sprockets out, you know? It's an interesting difference. And Tywin just sort of looks at Gregor without approval or disgust. But then there's silence. Tywin isn't saying anything. It's sort of his meeting, but he's not saying anything, which is a bit weird. But they continue to describe the attack on Riverrun. So the Blackfish, our main man, Brynden Rivers, Brynden Tully, attacked the Lannisters who were trying to take Riverrun. Lord Brax, who is one of the Lannister lords, tried to cross one of the rivers on rafts, but the Tullys threw rocks, and Lord Brax and a lot of his men drowned in the river, which then brings in the true hero of Game of Thrones, our favourite character, the protagonist, the true protagonist of the series, Flemont Brax. Flemont Brax. The guy with the fucking-corn horn, man, Flemont Brax, of the silver and purple tabard, and with the look of a man who cannot comprehend what he's just heard. Well, let's not take a too light-hearted approach to Flemont here, guys, because Flemont has just learned that his Lord Father, Lord Brax, has died. This is tragic, and we have the emotional impact of the loss of his father described about Flemont Brax. He cannot understand his grief is so deep that he can't even begin to understand the loss of his father. There is pathos in the character of Flemont Brax. Someone needs to go write some essays. We need some fan theories. We need to get to the bottom. Who is this Flemont Brax character? Is he who he seems to be? What if he's an imposter? What if this Flemont Brax is actually the Lord Flemont Brax, and the Lord Flemont Brax was Dario? Any of it could happen. I don't know. But Flemont is deeply upset. Ripperino, Lord Brax. So he drowned. Lord Brax did, and Tyrion's like, well, he was an idiot for wearing full armor and trying to cross a river on a raft. And then we describe some of the other people who were attacking Riverrun. There was the Umbers and the Mallisters, and Robb Stark's wolf was ripping horses to pieces, which sounds like a good meal. if the Dothraki know anything about it. Great John Umber was in the fight. Edmure Tully was freed. There were Tyroshi sellswords. Tyroshi sellswords were part of the Lannister army, mercenaries from Tyrosh, and they turned cloak. They joined the Starks when it became clear that the Starks were winning. And so Kevin's like, fucking mercenaries, man. You can't trust them far as you can throw them. And so the point is that sellswords are unreliable, which is something that comes up like a lot. There are many occasions in the series when characters take a moment to emphasize just how disloyal and unreliable sellswords are, which surely suggests that some mercenaries, some sellswords in this story will turn tail, right? Dario is a sellsword who helps Daenerys. Can he be trusted? Will he turn tail in some vital moment? Will he turn his cloak and join the other side? I mean, there is sort of some of that stuff already happening with like the Windblown or whoever in the Second Sons, all those blokes around Slaver's Bay. Bronn, another sellsword, he seems to be turning his cloak in Game of Thrones Season 7. So point is, don't trust mercenaries. Blackwater, not good people. Blackwater. We're going to take a bold stance on Blackwater. Would not recommend. And so Harris Swift goes on about how much of a catastrophe this is, which is always the most useful thing to in any kind of challenging situation, in any kind of disaster. The most constructive thing you can do is wave your arms around and say this really is a disaster, just so that anyone who doesn't fully understand just how fucked you are will. And Harris is like, oh, we just got to give up. We got to sue for peace. We got to ask Robb Stark to stop kicking us, please. And then Tyrion does a bit of a dramatic gesture. Tyrion is one for dramatic gestures. He knocks his cup off the table and it shatters into 1,000 pieces. And Tyrion says, there's your peace. You'd have as easy a time drinking from this cup as you would suing for peace with Robb Stark, because we fucking took off Robb Stark's father's head. Eddard Stark was recently executed by King Joffrey Baratheon, and for that reason, the Starks are not likely to surrender or make peace while they are winning. And it's also kind of fun that the cup shatters into pieces, and Tyrion is talking about the impossibility of peace. Bit of a one of the old homonym. That's a homonym, is what that is. Words that sound the same. Have a piece of that. And yeah, so the Starks are winning the war. And Adam Marbrand is like, man, look, we can still outfight them. We can still win. And Lord Lefford is like, maybe we can do some trade for hostages. But Adam is like, man, there's no way that the Starks are going to give us Jaime Lannister in exchange for Sansa and Arya, is what they're suggesting, because Sansa and Arya are just girls, and there's no way you'd trade Jaime Lannister, the heir to Casterly Rock. Well, not the heir when he's a Kingsguard, but Jaime Lannister, a noble knight of House Lannister, is worth much more than 2 girls of House Stark. I wonder what the exchange rate is exactly. Like, just how many girls would you have to trade to be worth 1 Jaime? I suspect Tywin would trade any number of girls for his dear golden lion. But, someone's got to work out the exact ratio here. But anyway, so everyone's just sort of arguing over what to do next. Should we sue for peace? Should we attack? Should we get more men? What do we need to do? But then Tywin, who's been silent this whole time, and this bit is done really well in the show, Tywin stands up, turns around and says, "They have my son. They have my son." Something like that. And everyone just poops themselves a little bit. And Tywin says, "Get out, all of you," and everyone leaves, except Tywin says, "Yo, Tyrion, stay here," and so Tyrion does. So this is like being pulled into the headmaster's office when you're in 8th grade and you set one of the pet hamsters on fire. Tyrion's having to talk to his scary dad, and so he does. And Tywin's like, man, it really was a terrible fucking idea to cut off Ned Stark's head. That is madness, rank madness. Because if Ned was still alive, he could have been used as a hostage, as a pawn, to be able to trade for Jaime in order to work out some kind of a peace, in order to make shit real. But by killing Ned, Joffrey has destroyed their most valuable asset in this war. And Tyrion says, well, Joff's only a kid. I made a few mistakes here and there when I was a kid. And Tywin says, yeah, when you were a kid, you went and married a whore. You married a prostitute, Tysha. So, that's a bit of a low blow. That's a bit uncalled for. That's really just sort of rooting around in some old wounds for no good reason. So it's really a like the bitterness is mutual from Tywin and Tyrion. They're jabbing at each other unnecessarily all the time, butting up against each other because deep down they are so similar. And then Tywin says, and it's actually even worse than that, because you know what else has happened, mate? There's a new king, and Kevin looks poleaxed. He looks poleaxed. You know what that word means? A poleaxe is like a weapon. So apparently being poleaxed means being shocked. It's quite a lovely way of putting it. If you were hit with a poleaxe, I think you would be shocked, especially given a poleaxe is rather an archaic weapon, isn't it? I mean, I'd be even more surprised at getting poleaxed than I would be if I got, say, truncheoned or something. But the point is that Tywin's like, yo, there's a new king, and everyone's like, what do you mean a new king? Has Joff been replaced? But Tywin says, no, we still have King Joffrey. We just have another king now. Renly Baratheon has made a claim on the throne. He's married Marjorie Tyrell at Highgarden, and he's gathering swords, and he has decided that he wants to be king. Which everyone quickly identifies as a bit bullshit, because Stannis is the elder brother of Renly, so it should be Stannis who's the next king. But Renly's decided that he's prettier than Stannis, and therefore he's more popular than Stannis, and therefore he should be the king. And Tyrion is praised by Tywin a bit, says that, well, you're not as dumb as I thought you were. You may be ugly, but you're not stupid, Tywin says. And they discuss how Stannis is dangerous, how he's gathering his strength, he's building ships, he's hiring mercenaries, he's bringing a Shadowbinder from Ashai. A Shadowbinder. Which, of course, we know as Melisandre. The Red Priestess Melisandre is being brought to Dragonstone. We still don't know the exact circumstances of that. I mean, maybe Melisandre had a vision that Azor Ahai was going to be at Dragonstone, and that's why she came there. But this passage suggests that Stannis is bringing a Red Priestess to Dragonstone from Ashai. Like, that almost suggests that Stannis sent a quick text over to Ashai and was like, hey, you got any Red Priestesses for me? We still don't know those circumstances. Maybe we never will know the exact sequence of events. But anyway, Kevin describes further about the bad situation. Thoros of Myr and Beric Dondarrion, the Proto-Brotherhood without banners, are still attacking the Lannisters. Roose Bolton and the rest of his army is to the north. Robb Stark has the twins and Moat Cailin. They're kind of surrounded by shit right now. The Arryns are to the east. Stannis Baratheon is on Dragonstone, and Renly is at Highgarden. So it seems as though fucking everyone is against him right now. But Tyrion points out, well, at least Rhaegar Targaryen is still dead. And of course, it would be a George Martinian little ironic twist if actually in that situation Rhaegar was still alive. That would be a very George Martin sort of a thing to do. To list all these bad things and then just chuck on another, which kind of relates to one of the super wacky theories that some people have. Some people think that Mance Rayder is actually secretly Rhaegar Targaryen, which is probably lunacy, but it's a fun idea, and this particular passage does kind of fit that idea in a funny little way. Because this is something that's actually mentioned several times, I think. Like, there's this point where they're like, oh, Rhaegar Targaryen is still dead. But there's also another point in this book, I think, where someone's like, oh, there's a rumor that the ghost of Rhaegar Targaryen is at Dragonstone and is gathering swords to him or something. So there are actually multiple weird references to Rhaegar still being alive, which is a funny, interesting little detail. Do you say detail or detail? I say detali. And so the Lannisters are like, man, this ain't good. And so Tywin says, but you know what? We're gonna fight. I got a plan. So I'm gonna go to Harrenhal, the ruined castle of Harrenhal. And Kevin's like, oh, that place is grim and unlucky. It's cursed. But Tywin's like, I don't believe in curses. I don't believe in dying on toilets. I don't believe in shitting gold. We're going to Harrenhal. And on the way, I'm going to release my fucking hounds. I'm going to send out Sir Gregor. I'm going to send out Vargo Hoat. I'm going to send out Armory Lorch. Basically, some of the most unpleasant people in Westeros Tywin has in his service. And he's sending them out to burn the Riverlands, he says. He tells them to set the Riverlands afire. From the God's Eye to the Red Fork. They will burn, my lord, says Sir Kevin. And Tywin specifically says, that he wants Tyrion's mountain clansmen to go out and rape and plunder. He wants goods, stock, women, take what they want and burn the rest. So Tywin is specifically ordering the slaughter of innocents. He's specifically ordering raping and burning. War crimes is what we'd probably call this. And Kevin is totally complicit. They will burn, my lord, Kevin says. So a lot of people sort of see Kevin... Oh, we've got a bit of clipping. Some people see Kevin as like a good guy compared to Tywin. And, you know, maybe he is a good guy compared to Tywin. That's not hard. But it's worth noting that Kevin is totally just hunky-dory with Tywin going like, yeah, let's burn and rape some innocents. So let's not let Kevin off that hook. There are some good essays to that effect. And Tyrion's like, I have no doubt that my clansmen would just love to have a good old burn and a good old rape. Which again means that Tyrion, by the way, Tyrion is totally cool with all of this pillaging and burning. So let's not let him off the hook either. Tyrion in season 7 has been very humane, hasn't he? Always urging not to burn and to do things the peaceful way and to blah, blah, blah. He's not at all like that in the books. In fact, he mentions a plan to totally destroy the Vale of Arryn at some point. So Tyrion's also pretty chill with the whole sort of war crimes thing. Much more whitewashed in the show, I think. But Tyrion's like, nah, I'd rather keep my mountain clansmen with me because they're my personal sort of guard, and that's useful for me. And then Tywin's like, all right, that's fine, but you better learn to sort of rein them in and get them to stop stabbing each other over sausages because, mate, son, I'm sending you to King's Landing. And Tyrion's like, what? You're sending me to the capital? And Tywin's like, yeah, I'm going to send you to the capital and you're going to rule as Hand of the King in my absence. And so Tyrion's like, oh, wow, Cersei's not going to like that. Which foreshadows the whole sort of conflict that they go through for the next 2 books, which well eventually culminates in Tywin's death and Tyrion being accused of murder. But Tywin describes everything that he wants done in the city. He's like, man, Joffrey is a loose cannon. You need to rein him in. The blokes on the council, Littlefinger, Pycelle, Varys, I don't trust any of them. He calls Varys a cockless wonder. He complains about Janos Slynt being made a lord, and we have a bit of classism from Tywin saying, oh, Janos Slynt's father was a butcher. It's bullshit that he should be a lord. He should not rule Harrenhal, the seat of kings. So Tywin really has a classist streak where he doesn't think gross poor people should ever have positions of power. As if the Lannisters had never been, Lan the clever, the trickster, or everyone has humble. I mean, we were all descended from some kind of lemur looking fucker at some point, right? We're all ultimately the son of an amoeba. So what's Tywin's class? I don't suppose he. Anyway, And Selmy, Barristan Selmy. Why did they kick out Barristan Selmy from the Kingsguard? It's so useful to have the name of Barristan the Bold in your brand. It's the best like brand endorsement. Hi, my name's Captain Shepherd, and this is my favorite house in Westeros. Hi, I'm Captain Barristan Selmy, and I approve of this message. That's the value of having Barristan the Bold. Of course, we learn later that Varys incepted the idea to dismiss Barristan, which was in Varys's interests because he sent Barristan to go support Daenerys. So Varys was actually behind that particular event. And yeah, so Tywin's like, basically, I'm trusting you with the responsibility to sort shit out politically in the capital, which is a sign of respect and a sign of trust that Tywin places in his hated brother. And so Tywin's like, oh, you've learned some good lessons from me, and Tyrion says, well, more than you know, father, which sort of echoes. Which sort of raises some of that stuff that Jenna Lannister tells Jaime in Feast about how, Tyrion is Tywin's son more than any of the other Lannisters. Well, and when Tyrion kills Tywin, he tells him, I am your son. I am you writ small. That's one of the great themes of Tyrion and Tywin's relationship. Despite all their hatred, perhaps the reason for all their hatred even is because they recognize one another in each other. They see their likeness, and that's part of why they hate each other so much. They hate in each other what they hate about themselves. I think that's at the heart of the relationship between Tyrion and Tywin. You are my son, Tywin tells Tyrion. And Tyrion does not respond to this symbol of trust very positively. Tyrion says, oh, you piece of shit. The only reason why you're being all nice to me now and being trusting in me now is because you think you'll never get Jaime back. Jaime was Tywin's true son, his only great, meaningful, good son, his golden, pretty, capable, tall, handsome son. That's where he invested all his eggs. But now that Jaime's been captured, Tywin seems to think, well, I got to make do with Tyrion now. Even though he's gross and I never liked him, he's going to have to be my heir. And so Tyrion sort of projects all of those assumptions onto Tywin, and then gets really angry at Tywin and thinks he'd like to cut his heart out. So there's really no winning for Tywin with Tyrion, is there? Like, sort of no matter what he does, Tyrion will find some way to hate Tywin. But he does, and Tywin still hasn't said the really ugly thing yet, because just at the end of the chapter, as Tyrion leaves, Tywin says one last thing: don't bring your whore Shay to court. He doesn't threaten to hang her here, but I think he does sort of later. So even in this moment of sort of positivity and trust that Tywin places in Tyrion, he tells Tyrion not to bring his lover to court. And it doesn't seem especially pointed that when he says that, but obviously for Tyrion, this is a real blow, because he's starting to fall for Shay, and he wants to keep her with him. And on the way out, he sees the body of Masha Heddle rotting on the gibbet. And then Tyrion goes to bed with Shay, and she kisses him, and nipples stiffen, as nipples are wont to do. And Tyrion kisses Shay and says, I think I'd like to take you to King's Landing. And then the chapter ends. Which is interesting, isn't it? The way it's presented, it almost seems as though Tyrion only decides to bring Shay with him after he's specifically told by Tywin not to bring Shay. So you got to sort of wonder, has Tyrion really bonded with Shay so much that he feels inseparable from her? Or is the reason why Tyrion wants to bring Shay because Tywin told him not to? Is this love, or is this more some sort of childish defiance of his meanie poo father? Do you think that's maybe what's happening? What does this mean for Tyrion and Tywin more generally? It's a measure of trust in Tyrion that he's never received from his father before. No doubt Tywin will judge Tyrion for his actions in King's Landing, for the better or for the worse. And we will see more about how that plays out in the chapters to come, or in the books to come. We'll see if we get to those books. I'm losing my fucking voice. But I hope you enjoyed this episode. And we'll have more episodes soon. Cheers.